The super empath possesses a unique psychological profile that creates magnetic pull for avoidant individuals, particularly after periods of separation or withdrawal. Their distinct qualities operate on principles that bypass the avoidant person's typical defensive mechanisms and trigger responses rooted in deep psychological need rather than conscious choice. When super empaths pull away or establish distance, they inadvertently create the exact conditions that make avoidance pursue rather than retreat, reversing the usual dynamic where emotional availability triggers withdrawal. They embody the independence avoidants crave. The super empath demonstrates genuine emotional self sufficiency and independence that directly addresses the avoidant person's deepest fear about relationships. When they pull away, they do so from a position of authentic wholeness rather than wounded reaction or strategic manipulation. This independence communicates that they neither need the avoidant person for emotional completion nor require their validation for self worth. The avoidant person finds themselves drawn to someone who embodies the very autonomy they desperately protect. This quality proves irresistible because it dissolves the avoidant person's primary reason for maintaining distance. They experience no pressure to be responsible for someone else's emotional well being or happiness, liberating them from the suffocating burden they associate with intimate relationships. The superempath's ability to thrive independently while still desiring connection demonstrates that intimacy and autonomy can coexist, challenging the avoidant person's fundamental belief that relationships inevitably lead to loss of self. They see through the defense mechanisms. The super empath possesses extraordinary emotional intelligence that allows them to recognize the avoidant person's difficult behaviors as protective mechanisms rather than character flaws or intentional cruelty. When they pull away, they do so with understanding of the psychological wounds driving the avoidant person's patterns rather than taking the behavior personally. This compassionate perception without enabling creates profound impact on the avoidant person who has rarely experienced being truly seen beneath their armor. The avoidant person finds themselves drawn back to someone who understands their internal struggles without requiring them to explain or justify their defensive patterns. This recognition feels simultaneously terrifying and deeply comforting as they encounter perhaps the first person who sees their wounded child beneath the detachment. The super empath's ability to hold space for their complexity without trying to fix or change them creates psychological safety they have never experienced in other relationships. They refuse to chase or beg. The super empath's withdrawal involves complete cessation of pursuit, desperate contact, or emotional pleading that typically characterizes others' responses to avoidant distancing. When they pull away, they do so with dignity and self-respect intact, refusing to compromise their worth by chasing someone emotionally unavailable. This refusal to engage in anxious pursuit disrupts the familiar dynamic that reinforces the avoidant person's defensive patterns and sense of control. The avoidant person experiences confusion and intrigue when their withdrawal fails to trigger the expected desperate pursuit. They find themselves in unfamiliar territory where their usual strategies of creating distance no longer provide the validation of being wanted or the comfort of predictable patterns. The super empath's calm acceptance of separation without drama forces the avoidant person to question whether they still matter, triggering their own anxiety about abandonment and loss. They mirror the avoidant's energy. The super empath matches the avoidant person's level of investment and emotional availability rather than consistently offering more than they receive. When they pull away, they establish equilibrium where reciprocity becomes necessary for continued connection. This mirroring technique forces the avoidant person to experience the emotional landscape they create for others, including the loneliness and disconnection that results from emotional distance. The avoidant person begins feeling what their partners typically experience: the uncertainty of wondering whether someone cares, the anxiety of inconsistent attention, the pain of emotional unavailability. This reversal creates motivation to pursue and invest because they discover that wanting someone who does not desperately want them back feels safer than being pursued.